What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this Weedeater brand mower, and the problem is I just picked it off the curb for free and I don't know anything about it. Let's take a good look at it, find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we try and repair this mower. However, it may not be the exact repair you need to make to yours. We'll explore other options later in the video. So I saw an ad online for a free mower on the curb. Unfortunately, it didn't state what was wrong with it, so of course that means we have absolutely zero history on it, which makes it more interesting for me as we try to figure out why this mower was put onto the curb. Overall, this mower is in great shape as it looks as though it wasn't used that much. There are a few things we need to take care of, like this clevis pin they were using because of a missing wing nut. Not a big deal as I happen to have a spare to replace it with. The other obvious issue looks to be a sticking brake cable. I don't want to pull too hard on the brake handle as the cable's anchor has come out of its location. The usual fix is to replace the cable, but we might be able to save it for now so we can get this engine started. I'll just remove the cable from the lower anchor point and then take it to the table. Here I'm going to start lubricating it to see if it'll free up. To make it more effective, I'll spray lube into both ends of the cable. You might have to spend several minutes doing this and spraying it multiple times. After letting it sit for a while, try moving the cable, and luckily for us, our cable is now free again. Now with the stuck part of the cable exposed, I'll add even more lubricant. So this is not a permanent fix, but it will allow us to start the engine without bypassing the kill switch. Later on, I will be replacing this cable. Now that the cable is working again, I'll reinstall it. However, it's not a brand new cable, there's still some resistance in it, and this is going to try to work the anchor loose again. Until I get another cable, I'll use a cable tie to help keep the anchor from coming loose from the handlebar. Now after installation, it seems to be working well enough for us to try and figure out what's wrong with this mower. With the brake cable temporarily fixed, we can now use it to see if the engine is locked up, and as you can see, the engine is spinning freely. Now I can actually even feel the engine fighting back a little bit, which means we do have some compression. The only thing that's wrong is that the recoil is a little bit slow to retract the rope, but we'll take a look at that later on. If we look inside the fuel tank, we can see there's some debris in it, which isn't too big of an issue. The good part is that there's no gas in it either. If bad gas was the reason why this mower was put onto the curb, with it all evaporated, well, we don't have to worry about it anymore. The next thing I want to do is check the oil in the engine, and this is when things go wrong. After removing the dipstick and cleaning it off, I screwed it back into the block, and then after taking it out, we find no oil on the end of the dipstick. That means that this engine may have been ran with very little oil, or at least not enough to register on the stick. I hate to say it, but a bad engine would be a very good reason to put this mower on the curb. Next, I'm going to tip this mower on its side and inspect the blade. What I'm looking for are any serious nicks or gouges on the edge of the blade. This would indicate that they may have hit something hard with it and the engine is now damaged. Luckily, I don't see any serious damage to the edge, so I don't think that's the reason why this mower was given away. While the mower is on its side, I'm going to take this opportunity to lubricate the wheels. Now, it would be best to remove the wheels to do it, but at this point, I don't even know if the engine works yet, so I really don't want to put any extra effort into this mower until I know it runs. With the mower back on its wheels, we don't want to forget to add oil to the engine. When I was looking into it, I did see some oil at the bottom, so that means we don't have to add a lot of oil to get it to the right level. The next thing to do is to remove the spark plug and inspect its condition. It looks like the engine is burning quite a bit of oil or running rich with fuel because it's covered in carbon and pretty much fouled out. Now, if you don't have a new spark plug on hand to swap out, but you have a propane torch, you might want to consider burning off the carbon, and if that doesn't work, we can always replace it with a new spark plug later on. So it's not brand new, but it should work better without all that carbon on it. Now before I install the plug, I'm going to use my compression tester. This will measure how much pressure the engine can make on its compression stroke. You can find these online for less than $20, and to use it, install it into the spark plug hole and pull the rope several times. We want to see a reading well over 100 psi, but we do not want to see a reading below 50. So the reading is 75 psi, which sounds low. However, this engine has a compression release to make it easier to pull over, so the reading will be lower than normal. That means this engine more than likely is not worn out, so it should start and run just so long as we have spark and fuel. To test for spark, I'm going to use a spark checker. You can find these online for just a few dollars, and to use it, install it in line with the spark plug, pull the rope a few times, and watch for an orange glow in the tester. To make it easier, try doing this test in a shady area. Now I know it can be hard to see, so I stopped the video to show you there is an orange glow in the tester. That means we do have spark, which is great news. Before I do a test start though, I want to remove the recoil assembly so we can lubricate it. It's not a big deal, but it's kind of annoying to wait for the rope to return into the recoil before your next pull. Luckily on this style of engine, removing the recoil only takes a few seconds. After it's off the engine, just spray some lube into the opening where the end of the spring is visible. This isn't the best way to lubricate it, but the problem isn't that serious to require removing the spring for a full cleaning and lubrication. It seems to work a little bit better now, so I'll reinstall it back onto the engine. After that, we can then remove the air filter, spray some gas into the carb's throat, and try starting it. Luckily, it started right up and ran for a few seconds, which is great news. The last thing to do is put some fresh gas in the tank, prime the carburetor, and see if it starts and runs. Well, the engine started and seemed to run just fine. However, within 10 seconds, it started to run poorly. If we look at the throttle and governor linkages, it seems like someone tried to fix the problem by playing with the spring. It looks like they moved the end of the spring to the throttle cable anchor, which is not correct. I'll move the spring to where it's supposed to go, but after putting it back, it looks like I'm going to have to adjust it once we get the engine running again. Also, as a side note, the air filter is not clogged, so it's not causing the engine to run rich with fuel and fouling out the spark plug. Next, I'm going to start the engine again and adjust its running speed. So after adjusting the engine speed, it is running a lot faster. However, it's still running poorly. Now the problem could be the spark plug that we cleaned earlier, so to rule it out, I'm going to replace it with a new spark plug. Now after taking out the old plug, you can see it's covered in carbon, so there's definitely something wrong with this engine. After getting this engine started, it sounded great, but this time it only took 6 seconds to start running poorly. I really don't think the new spark plug became fouled with carbon in only 6 seconds. I also removed the air filter to show that it's not the reason for the engine running badly. There's not much left to look at, but there's one more thing I want to check, and it's behind the muffler and this plate. So behind this plate are the valve springs and where the lifters make contact with the valve stems. The top spring is for the intake valve and the bottom one is for the exhaust valve. And what we need to do is carefully turn the blade till it's facing the middle part of the deck. This should put the engine either to top dead center or bottom dead center so we can measure the valve lash. The lash is the clearance between the lifter and the valve stem, and if it's off, it could explain why this engine is running poorly. Next, I'll use this 7/1000 of an inch feeler gauge to see if it fits in the gap between the lifter and the exhaust valve stem. It should just slip in and should be able to move it about with some slight drag. And the good news is that it slips in and there's just a tiny bit of drag, so this valve lash is correct. For the intake valve, I'm going to use this 5/1000 of an inch feeler gauge, and it should act the same way as the exhaust did. However, we have a major problem. It's not fitting in the gap. That means the gap is narrower than 5/1000 of an inch. This time, I'll use a 3/1000 of an inch feeler and see if that fits instead. So it looks like the gap is 3/1000 of an inch, which is out of tolerance for this engine, and more than likely is the reason why it's running poorly. Unfortunately, this fix requires us to take off the head and the intake valve to grind the stem down for more clearance, but we're going to have to save that for a winter project. Another reason why this engine might be running poorly is that the timing might be slightly off. If the mower hits something like a stump or a rock, it could slightly shear the key on the flywheel and the ignition timing would be off. The fix would be to replace the key and the timing should return to normal. So my question, is this mower worth fixing? It should take about $20 in parts and about 2 or 3 more hours if you know what you're doing. Personally, I'm not sure if it's worth it because this mower is not worth as much as one with a larger engine and a self-propelled system. I don't think I could make any profit on it considering the amount of time I've already spent on this mower. By the time I get it fixed, I would have spent probably about 4 hours on it, and the bigger question is, how much is your time worth to you? Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions, and I hope to see you in the next video.